The smell of burnt coffee and broken dreams filled the air as I stared at my wife across the booth at Murphy's Diner. 24 hours married, and Jenna already looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Her perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the chipped Formica table while she scrolled through her phone, probably checking how many likes her wedding photos got on Instagram. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Ev, honey, she said without looking up, that fake, sweet voice she used when she wanted something. Would you be mad if my boyfriend came over for breakfast? The question hung in the air like a bad fart. Around us, the morning crowd of truckers and construction workers went quiet. Even Dolores, our 60-year-old waitress who'd seen everything twice, stopped mid-pour with the coffee pot. I sat down my cup slowly, studying Jenna's face. She was grinning like she just told the world's funniest joke. Her best friend Steph, sitting next to her in the booth, was practically vibrating with suppressed giggles. Logan Peretti, the local auto shop owner who'd been eyeing it with my wife since high school, leaned back in his chair with that smug smile that made me want to rearrange his dental work. Not at all, I said, matching her tone perfectly, as long as you don't mind if I bring my lawyer. The laughter died faster than a mayfly in winter. My name is Evan Mercer, and I'm what you might call a professional problem solver. Not the kind that breaks kneecaps or makes people disappear. I'm a handyman and contractor. I fix things that are broken. Sometimes that's a leaky pipe or a busted door frame. Sometimes it's a marriage built on lies and Instagram filters. I've lived in Millbrook Falls my whole life, all 34 years of it. This place is the kind of small New England town where everyone knows your business before you do. Where the biggest excitement is usually the annual pumpkin festival, and where secrets have a way of bubbling up like backed-up sewage. Jenna and I had been together for 3 years before we got married. She was the town's fitness influencer, running boot camp classes at the local gym, and posting videos of herself doing yoga poses that would make a pretzel jealous. I was the guy who fixed her broken toilet and somehow got invited to stay for dinner. Looking back, I should have seen the signs, the late-night emergency training sessions, the way she'd guard her phone like it contained nuclear launch codes, the mysterious bruises that definitely weren't from yoga, unless Downward Dog had gotten a lot more aggressive lately. But love makes you stupid. Or maybe I just liked the way she looked in those tight workout clothes. Oh, come on, Ev. Steph chimed in, her voice dripping with that fake concern she'd perfected. Jenna's just joking around. It's your honeymoon. Steph Morrison had been Jenna's best friend since high school, and her partner in crime ever since. She sold real estate in town, which basically meant she knew everyone's financial business, and wasn't shy about sharing it. She had the kind of blonde hair that came from a bottle, and the kind of tan that came from too many hours under a sun lamp. Yeah, babe, Jenna added, finally looking up from her phone. Don't be such a stick in the mud. Logan's just a friend. Logan stretched like a cat in the sun. His mechanic's uniform stretched tight across his chest. He worked out at the same gym where Jenna taught classes, and it showed. The guy looked like he'd been carved from granite and bad decisions. Just friends, he echoed, but his eyes were saying something entirely different. I nodded slowly, like I was considering this revelation. Around us, the diner had gone back to its normal hum of conversation, but I could feel the sideways glances. In a town this size, gossip traveled faster than bad news, and this little scene was going to be the talk of Murphy's for weeks. Well, I said, standing up and dropping a 20 on the table. This has been enlightening. I think I need to run some errands. Jenna's smile faltered slightly. Rands? It's our honeymoon, Ev. I know exactly what it is, I replied, grabbing my jacket from the back of the chair. Enjoy your breakfast, all of you. I walked out of Murphy's Diner with my head high and my heart somewhere around my ankles. Behind me, I could hear them laughing again, probably thinking they'd gotten away with something clever. They had no idea what they'd just started. The October air was crisp against my face as I walked the 6 blocks to Millbrook First National Bank. Mrs. Kowalski was sitting on her front porch as usual, watching the world go by with the intensity of a hawk spotting a field mouse. She'd lived in the house next to ours for 40 years and made it her business to know everyone else's business. "Morning, Evan," she called out, her Polish accent still thick after all these years in America. "How was the honeymoon?" "Educational," I replied, not breaking stride. She cackled like she knew exactly what I meant. The bank was nearly empty when I walked in. Sarah Chen, the branch manager, looked up from her desk with a professional smile that became genuine when she recognized me. "Evan, congratulations on the wedding. How can I help you today?" "I need to close my joint checking account and open a new personal one," I said, sliding my ID across her desk. Her smile flickered. "Is there a problem with the account?" "You could say that." It took 45 minutes to move all the money from our joint account into a new one with just my name on it. Jenna had contributed exactly 0 to our shared finances over the past 3 years, despite her social media empire and fitness classes. Turned out being an influencer didn't pay as well as she liked to pretend. From the bank, I drove to our house. My house, technically, since I'd bought it before we got married. It was a 2-story colonial built in the 1920s, with a basement workshop where I kept my tools, and an attic office where Jenna filmed her workout videos. I spent the next 4 hours packing. Not my stuff, Jenna's stuff. Every designer workout outfit, every piece of equipment she'd bought with money from our joint account, every product she'd gotten for free in exchange for Instagram posts, all of it went into boxes. Her prized possession was a set of Olympic weights she'd bought for $1,500 and used exactly 3 times. Those went into the back of my truck along with everything else. By the time I was done, the house looked like a monastery, clean, sparse, and peaceful. I left one thing on the kitchen table, a manila envelope with Jenna's name written across it in my careful handwriting. Then I loaded my truck and drove to Big Mike's apartment. Mike Kowalski, Mrs. K's nephew, had been my best friend since we were kids getting our asses kicked in the same boxing gym. He was 6'4", built like a refrigerator, and worked as a bouncer at O'Malley's bar downtown. He was also the only person in town who knew about Jenna's extracurricular activities. "You sure about this?" he asked, helping me unload boxes into his garage. "Never been more sure of anything in my life. What's in the envelope?" I smiled for the first time all day. Divorce papers, photos of her and Logan that I took through the gym window last week, and a letter explaining exactly what I think of their little joke this morning. Mike whistled low. "Damn, brother, you don't mess around." "The honeymoon's over, Mike. Time to get back to work." 3 weeks later, Jenna came home. I wasn't there to see it, but Mrs. Kowalski gave me the play-by-play over coffee the next morning. According to her, Jenna had pulled into the driveway in Logan's beat-up Camaro around noon, laughing and carrying on like she didn't have a care in the world. She was wearing those tiny shorts, Mrs. K reported with obvious disapproval. In October, that girl has no sense. The laughter had stopped when Jenna tried to open the front door and found that the locks had been changed. It had taken her 20 minutes of banging and shouting before she remembered the spare key under the fake rock by the garden. Then she went inside. Mrs. K continued, her eyes gleaming with the satisfaction of someone who'd witnessed justice being served. 5 minutes later, we heard the screaming. I'd been staying at Mike's place, officially on a work trip to Boston. Unofficially, I'd been sitting in my truck across town, waiting for this moment. The envelope had contained 3 things. Divorce papers that I'd had drawn up by Tom Bradley, the best lawyer in Millbrook Falls. A dozen photographs of Jenna and Logan in various compromising positions at the gym after hours. And a letter that I'd spent 2 weeks perfecting. Dear Jenna, thank you for clarifying our relationship status at Murphy's Diner. I appreciate honesty, even when it's delivered as a joke at my expense in front of half the town. Since you seem to prefer Logan's company to mine, I've taken the liberty of removing all obstacles to your happiness. You'll find I've moved your belongings to a storage unit on Route 9. The key is taped under the kitchen sink. I've also taken the liberty of closing our joint bank account, since you never contributed to it anyway. Don't worry, and I left you exactly what you put in. Nothing. The divorce papers are self-explanatory. I'm not asking for anything from you, because frankly, you don't have anything I want anymore. I hope you and Logan are very happy together. Just remember, if he'll cheat with you, he'll cheat on you. Have a nice life. Evan. P.S. Your gym membership expires at the end of the month. You might want to find a new place to work out. The photographs had been easy to get. Jenna thought she was being clever, meeting Logan at the gym after closing time. What she didn't know was that I'd installed a security camera in the parking lot 6 months ago, after someone had been vandalizing cars. The camera had a perfect view of the gym's back entrance and the large windows that looked into the main workout area. I'd been reviewing the footage for a different reason, trying to figure out who'd been stealing tools from my truck, when I'd spotted Jenna's car in the lot at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Curious, I'd driven over to investigate. What I'd found was my wife and Logan Petty putting on a show that would have made a porn director blush. I'd taken pictures through the window with my phone, gone home, and spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do with the information. The answer had come to me at Murphy's Diner, when Jenna had decided to make our private business into a public joke. Now, sitting in Mike's kitchen while Mrs. K reeled me with details of Jenna's meltdown, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. She called that Logan boy, Mrs. K continued. He came over in his loud car and they spent an hour loading boxes into it. Then they left together. Haven't seen her since. Good, I said, meaning it. But peace, I was about to learn, was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not in a town like Millbrook Falls, where everyone had an opinion, and most of them felt entitled to share it. The first shot fired in what would become known around town as the Mercer War came that evening at O'Malley's bar. I'd gone there to meet Mike after his shift, planning to have a quiet beer and maybe shoot some pool. Instead, I walked into what felt like an ambush. Steph Morrison was holding court at a table near the back, surrounded by half the women in town and a few men who should have known better. She was 3 drinks in and feeling righteous. "There he is," she announced loudly as I walked in. "The man who threw his wife out like garbage." The bar went quiet. Even the jukebox seemed to lower its volume out of respect for the drama that was about to unfold. I walked to the bar, ordered a beer from Danny Ali, and pretended not to notice the stares. But Steph wasn't done. "You know what he did?" she continued, her voice carrying across the room. "Poor Jenna comes home from visiting her sick mother, and this bastard has changed the locks, thrown all her stuff out, filed for divorce without even talking to her. Visiting her sick mother? That was rich. Jenna's mother lived in Florida and hadn't been sick a day in her life. That's not how a man handles problems in a marriage," added Tom Brennan, a plumber who'd been trying to get into Steph's pants for years. "As you talk things out, you work on them." A chorus of agreement rose from Steph's table. I took a long drink of my beer and considered my options. I could walk away, take the high road, let them think what they wanted to think, or I could set the record straight. "You're right, Tom," I said, turning around to face the room. "That's exactly how a man should handle problems in a marriage. You talk things out." The room held its breath. Of course, that's a lot easier when your wife isn't sleeping with someone else. The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a pin drop in the parking lot. Steph's face went white, then red, then white again. "That's a lie," she sputtered. "Jenna would never." "Logan, Perry," I said calmly. "Tuesday and Thursday nights at the gym. Sometimes Saturdays when they thought I was working. I've got pictures if anyone's interested." No one was interested in seeing the pictures, but everyone was interested in talking about them. The room erupted into a buzz of conversation that would fuel gossip for weeks. Steph stood up so fast she knocked over her chair. "You're a liar and a coward, Evan Mercer. Jenna deserves better than you. She's got better than me," I replied. "Logan's welcome to her." That's when things got interesting. The bar's front door opened and Logan Pretty walked in like he owned the place. He was dressed in his usual uniform of tight jeans and a black t-shirt that showed off his gym muscles. Behind him, looking like she'd been crying for a week, was Jenna. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Someone had called them, probably Steph. Logan scanned the room, his eyes settling on me with the kind of stare that was supposed to be intimidating. In his world, the world of small-town tough guys and bar fights, size and muscles were all that mattered. Unfortunately for Logan, I'd grown up in a different world, a world where being small and quick was better than being big and slow, where thinking 3 moves ahead was more important than throwing the hardest punch. "We need to talk," Logan said, walking toward me with the swagger of a man who'd never lost a fight. "No," I replied, finishing my beer. "We really don't." "You can't just spread lies about people, Mercer." "Who's lying?" Logan's face darkened. He was used to intimidating people with his size and his reputation. What he wasn't used to was someone who didn't back down. "You want to do this here?" he asked, moving closer. I looked around the bar. Every eye in the place was on us. This was exactly what they wanted. A show. Something to talk about for months. "I don't want to do this at all," I said honestly. "But if you insist on making it a thing, we can make it a thing." Logan smiled like a shark smelling blood. He outweighed me by 40 pounds and had 6 inches of reach on me. In his mind, this was already over. He threw the first punch exactly like I knew he would. A big, looping right hand that would have taken my head off if it had connected. It didn't connect. I slipped the punch, stepped inside his guard, and drove my right fist into his solar plexus with everything I had. The air rushed out of his lungs in a whoosh, and he doubled over, gasping. Before he could recover, I grabbed his head and brought my knee up to meet his face. Not hard enough to break his nose, but hard enough to make his eyes water and his knees wobble. The whole thing took maybe 3 seconds. Logan staggered backward, blood trickling from his nose, looking at me like I just performed magic. "Next time you want to fight someone," I said conversationally, "make sure they didn't spend 10 years in a boxing ring." The bar was silent. Even the jukebox had given up pretending to play. Jenna was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Part fear, part anger, part something else I couldn't identify. "This isn't over," Logan mumbled through his bloody nose. "Yes, it is," I replied. "It's been over for weeks. You just didn't know it yet." I dropped a 10 on the bar and walked toward the door. As I passed Jenna, she grabbed my arm. "Ev, please, can we talk? Just you and me." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then up at her face. She was beautiful, even with red eyes and smeared makeup. For just a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. Then I remembered the sound of her laughter at Murphy's Diner. "We already talked," I said, gently removing her hand at breakfast 3 weeks ago. "Remember?" I walked out of Allie's bar and into the cool October night, leaving behind a room full of people who finally understood that the quiet handyman they'd underestimated for years was done. Being underestimated, the war had officially begun. Word of the fight at O'Malley's spread through Millbrook Falls like wildfire through dry leaves. By the next morning, I'd gotten 12 phone calls, 6 text messages, and 1 visit from Mrs. Kowalski, who brought me coffee and homemade cookies while she pumped me for details. "That Logan boy had it coming," she declared, settling into Mike's kitchen chair like she planned to stay for hours. "Walking around town like he owns everything. Someone needed to knock him down a peg. But not everyone saw it that way. The problem with small towns is that everyone picks sides, and the sides aren't always based on who's right or wrong. They're based on who you like, who you're related to, who you owe money to, and who your kids go to school with. Logan Pretty's family had been running Parrott's Auto Shop for 3 generations. Half the town had their cars serviced there. The other half was related to someone who did. Jenna, meanwhile, had been teaching fitness classes to the women of Millbrook Falls for 2 years. She knew their secrets, their insecurities, their goals. She'd been their cheerleader and their confessor. I was just the guy who fixed their broken toilets. The first sign of organized resistance came on Thursday when I showed up at the Henderson house to install a new kitchen faucet. Margaret Henderson met me at the door with the kind of smile that could freeze hell. "I'm sorry, Evan, but we've decided to go with someone else." Someone else? "We think it's best, given the circumstances." The circumstances, like I was the one who'd been cheating. By Friday, I'd lost 3 more jobs. The Kowalski job, no relation to Mrs. K or Mike. The Morrison kitchen renovation, Steph's parents, naturally. And the biggest one, the Brennan basement remodel that would have paid my bills for 2 months. I was sitting in Mike's kitchen, staring at my phone and watching my livelihood evaporate, when inspiration struck. If they wanted to play games, I could play games too. Jenna had been staying with Steph since the night at O'Malley's, but she still had her gym membership and her Friday night boot camp class. More importantly, she still had her car, a red Honda Civic that she'd bought with money from our joint account and put in both our names. Technically, I owned half of that car. Friday evening, while Jenna was inside the gym teaching 20 women how to do squats without throwing out their backs, I was in the parking lot with a socket wrench and a plan. I didn't damage anything. I'm not a vandal. But I did remove a few key components: the battery, the alternator belt, and all 4 tires. I left them neatly arranged next to the car with a note tucked under the windshield wiper. "Jenna, since we're getting divorced, I figured I should claim my half of the car. I took the parts I paid for. You can have the rest. Good luck getting home. Evan." P.S. The tires are in storage unit 47 on Route 9. Same key as your other stuff. I was halfway home when my phone started ringing. Jenna's number flashed on the screen, followed immediately by Steph's, then Logan's. I turned off the phone and went to bed early. The next morning brought a visit from Chief of Police Ray Murphy, Danny Alley's brother-in-law, and the man who'd been looking for an excuse to hassle me since the bar fight. "Evan," he said, standing on Mike's front porch with his thumbs hooked in his belt. "We need to talk about your wife's car." "Ex-wife," I corrected. "And what about it?" "She says you vandalized it. I repossessed my half of it. The title's in both our names, and I can prove I paid for it. Check with Sarah Chen at the bank if you don't believe me." Chief Murphy's mustache twitched. He'd been hoping for something simple, a clear case of vandalism that would let him arrest me and restore some order to his town. "You can't just take parts off someone's car, Evan." "Why not? It's half mine." "Because it's—" He paused, realizing he was about to step into a legal minefield. "Because it's not right. Neither is adultery." But that didn't stop anyone. We stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Chief Murphy sighed and adjusted his hat. "Just try to keep things civil, okay? This town's got enough problems without you and Logan Peretti turning Main Street into a war zone." "I'm not the one who started this war, Chief. I'm just finishing it." After he left, I called Tom Bradley, my lawyer, and asked him to look into the legalities of joint property ownership. Then I called the storage facility and paid for another month on Jenna's unit. Then I got back to work. The beauty of being a handyman in a small town is that you get to know everyone's secrets. You see the empty bottles hidden in basement workshops. You notice the credit card bills left on kitchen counters. You hear the phone conversations that people think are private. Over the years, I'd accumulated a mental database of information that I'd never used and never planned to use, Until now. Steph Morrison, for instance, had been skimming money from her real estate clients for years. Nothing major, a few hundred here and there from closing costs, inspection fees that never got paid to inspectors, administrative charges that went straight into her pocket. I knew because I'd installed a new office safe in her house 6 months ago, and she'd been stupid enough to leave her files open on the desk while I worked. Tom Brennan, the plumber who'd been so quick to judge my marriage, had been cheating on his taxes for a decade. I knew because I'd helped him build a hidden workshop in his basement, where he stored tools and equipment that never appeared on his business inventory. Margaret Henderson, who'd canceled my kitchen job, had been having an affair with her mailman for 2 years. I knew because I'd seen his truck parked behind her house every Tuesday and Thursday when her husband was at work. I didn't plan to use any of this information. I'm not a blackmailer, and I don't make threats. But I didn't have to. On Monday morning, I ran into Tom Brennan at the hardware store. He was buying PVC pipe and avoiding eye contact. "Tom," I said pleasantly, "how's that basement workshop coming along? The one that's not on your business tax returns?" His face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. The one behind the false wall. Nice work, by the way. I helped you build it, remember?" Tom's hands were shaking as he paid for his pipe. "What do you want, Evan?" "Nothing, just making conversation." But the message was clear. I knew things, and if people wanted to make my life difficult, I could make their lives interesting in return. By Tuesday, I had my jobs back. All of them. By Wednesday, people were crossing the street to avoid me. By Thursday, Logan Peretti was ready to escalate things himself. I was working late in my shop, rebuilding a carburetor for Mrs. Kowalski's ancient Buick, when I heard footsteps on the gravel driveway. Through the window, I could see 3 figures approaching in the darkness. Logan was in the middle, flanked by his cousins, Tony and Sal. Peretti. The Petty boys had a reputation for solving problems with their fists, and they'd apparently decided I was a problem that needed solving. I turned off the shop lights and moved to the window, watching them approach. They were trying to be quiet, but subtlety had never been the Peretti family's strong suit. They made it halfway across the yard before the motion sensor lights kicked on, flooding the area with brilliant white light. "Shit," I heard Tony mutter. Logan held up a hand, stopping his cousins. He looked around, suddenly uncertain. In the harsh glare of the security lights, they looked less like tough guys and more like teenagers who'd been caught toilet papering a house. "We know you're in there, Mercer," Logan called out. "Come on out. We just want to talk." "No, you don't," I replied from the darkened doorway of the shop. "But come on in if you want. The door's open." The 3 men exchanged glances. They'd been expecting to catch me alone and unprepared. Instead, they were standing in bright lights while I remained hidden in the shadows. "This is between you and me," Logan said. "Leave my family out of it." "I didn't bring your family into it. You did. You humiliated me in front of the whole town." "You humiliated yourself. I just gave you the opportunity." Logan took a step forward, his fists clenched. "I'm tired of your smart mouth." "Then maybe you should stop giving me reasons to use it." That's when I heard the second set of footsteps coming up the driveway. Heavy footsteps that could only belong to one person. Big Mike emerged from the darkness like an avenging angel, all 6'4" and 250 pounds of him. He was carrying a baseball bat and wearing the kind of smile that made strong men reconsider their life choices. "Evening, boys," he said pleasantly. "Little late for a social call, isn't it?" The Petty cousins took an involuntary step backward. Tony and S were tough guys, but they weren't stupid. Mike had a reputation that went back to his bouncer days, and smart people didn't mess with him. "This doesn't concern you," Kowalski Logan said. But his voice had lost some of its confidence. "My friend's business is my business," Mike replied, tapping the bat against his palm. "Especially when 3 guys show up at his house after dark." The standoff lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like an hour. Finally, Logan jerked his head toward the street. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," I replied from the doorway. "It's been over since the day you decided to sleep with my wife. You just haven't figured that out yet." They left without another word, but I knew they'd be back. Men like Logan Peretti don't walk away from a fight, especially not when they've been humiliated twice. "Oh, thanks," I told Mike as we watched them disappear into the darkness. "No problem, but this is getting out of hand, brother. Maybe it's time to end it." I thought about Jenna's laughter at Murphy's Diner, about the jobs I'd lost and the friends who'd turned their backs on me, about the way the whole town had been ready to crucify me for defending myself. "It'll end," I said, "when I'm ready for it to end." The next morning brought news that changed everything. I was having coffee with Mrs. Kowalski when she dropped the bombshell with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. "That Jenna girl is pregnant," she announced, stirring sugar into her cup. I nearly choked on my coffee. "What? Pregnant? 3 months along?" According to Dolores at the diner, she heard it from Margaret Henderson, who heard it from Dr. Patterson's receptionist. The timeline hit me like a sledgehammer. 3 months ago, Jenna and I were still married and supposedly happy. 3 months ago, she was still sleeping in my bed and telling me she loved me. 3 months ago, she was also sleeping with Logan Peretti. "Whose is it?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mrs. K shrugged. "Could be anyone's the way that girl carries on, but smart money's on the pretty boy." I sat back in my chair, processing this information. A baby changed everything. It meant Jenna and Logan weren't just having a fling. They were building a future together. It meant my marriage had been over long before I'd realized it. It also meant I'd been played for a fool in ways I was just beginning to understand. The pieces started falling into place. Jenna's sudden interest in getting married after 3 years of taking things slow. Her insistence on a big wedding that I couldn't afford. Her refusal to sign a prenuptial agreement. She'd been planning this from the beginning. Get married, get pregnant with Logan's baby, divorce me, and take half of everything I owned. The only problem with her plan was that she'd gotten cocky and tipped her hand too early. I finished my coffee, kissed Mrs. K on the cheek, and drove to Tom Bradley's law office. "I need to know about paternity tests," I told him. Tom looked up from his paperwork with the expression of a man who'd seen too much human stupidity to be surprised by anything. "Jenna's pregnant, apparently, and you don't think it's yours?" "I know it's not mine. The question is whether I can prove it." Tom leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. In Massachusetts, any child born during a marriage is legally presumed to be the husband's child, even if you're separated or in the process of divorcing. But if I can prove it's not mine, then you're off the hook for child support, but you'll need a court-ordered paternity test, and Jenna will have to agree to it. What if she doesn't agree? Then you'll have to wait until after the baby's born and petition the court. It gets messy. I thought about this for a moment. What if she's not married when the baby's born? Tom's eyebrows went up. Then the biological father would be responsible. But Evan, your divorce won't be final for at least 6 months. She'll still be married to you when that baby comes. Not if I can help it. I left Tom's office with a plan forming in my mind. It was risky, possibly illegal, and definitely the kind of thing that could blow up in my face. It was also exactly the kind of thing that Jenna would never see coming. The first step was gathering intelligence. I needed to know where Jenna was staying, what she was doing, and, most importantly, what she was planning. Steph Morrison's house was a split-level ranch on Elm Street with a perfect view from the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot across the street. I bought a large coffee and a box of donuts and settled in to watch. Jenna's routine was depressingly predictable. She slept until noon, spent an hour on her phone, then drove to the gym in Logan's Camaro. She taught her afternoon classes, worked out for another hour, then went back to Steph's house. Logan's routine was even more predictable. Work until 5, gym until 7, then either Steph's house or back to his apartment above the auto shop. They were creatures of habit, which made them easy to track. The opportunity I'd been waiting for came on Friday afternoon. Jenna was at the gym teaching her usual boot camp class to a group of women who hung on her every word like she was dispensing wisdom from on high. Logan was at the shop working on a transmission rebuild that would keep him busy for hours. Steph was showing a house on the other side of town, which meant Steph's house was empty. I'd installed the security system at Steph's house 2 years ago, which meant I knew exactly how to disable it. I'd also installed new locks on all the doors, which meant I still had copies of the keys. Breaking and entering is a felony, but technically I wasn't breaking anything. And I wasn't planning to steal anything, just borrow it for a few hours. Steph's house was exactly what you'd expect from a real estate agent. Perfectly decorated, obsessively clean, and completely soulless. Jenna had made herself at home in the guest bedroom, which looked like a hurricane had hit a Victoria's Secret store. I found what I was looking for in the nightstand drawer, Jenna's real phone. She'd been carrying 2 phones for months, the one she used in public and the one she used for private conversations. I'd seen her hiding the second phone dozens of times, but never thought much of it. Now I understood why. The phone was unlocked, probably because she felt safe leaving it in Steph's house. The text message history was a goldmine of information that made my divorce lawyer's job infinitely easier. Messages with Logan going back 8 months, including photos that would make a porn star blush. Messages with other men I didn't recognize. Messages with Steph discussing their plan to take Evan for everything he's worth. But the most interesting messages were the ones with someone named Derek. Derek, it turned out, was a lawyer in Boston who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Jenna had been planning to leave me for months, and Derek had been coaching her on how to maximize her settlement. The plan was simple: get pregnant, claim the baby was mine, file for divorce on grounds of mental cruelty, and demand half of everything, plus child support and alimony. The pregnancy announcement at Murphy's Diner hadn't been a joke. It had been a declaration of war. I took pictures of every message, every photo, every piece of evidence that would prove Jenna's adultery and premeditation. Then, I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and left the house. Step 1 was complete. Step 2 required a different kind of expertise. Sasha Volkov worked the front desk at the gym and had been watching Logan Peretti break hearts for 2 years. She was 23, blonde, and had the kind of body that came from good genetics and daily workouts. She was also Logan's girlfriend, though he'd apparently forgotten to mention that to Jenna. I found Sasha at the Coffee Connection on Saturday morning, nursing a latte and scrolling through her phone with the kind of focused intensity that meant she was stalking someone on social media. "Mind if I sit down?" I asked. She looked up, startled. "You're Jenna's husband." "Ex-husband." "And you're Logan's girlfriend." Her face darkened. "Ex-girlfriend." "Because of Jenna?" "Because Logan's Anne, who thinks he can have his cake and eat it too." I sat down across from her and signaled the waitress for coffee. "Want to hear something interesting?" For the next 20 minutes, I told Sasha everything I'd learned from Jenna's phone. About the pregnancy, about the plan to take me for everything I was worth, about the other men Jenna had been seeing. By the time I was finished, Sasha's face had gone through several different shades of red. "That witch," she whispered. "Logan doesn't know about the other guys," I continued. "He thinks he's the only one. He thinks Jenna's going to leave me for him, and they're going to live happily ever after with their little baby." "What do you want me to do about it?" I slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of one of Jenna's text conversations with a guy named Marcus, complete with photos that left nothing to the imagination. "Logan deserves to know what kind of woman he's throwing his life away for," I said. "Don't you think?" Sasha stared at the paper for a long moment, then folded it carefully and put it in her purse. "You're a bastard," she said. "Yes, I am." But I'm an honest bastard. She stood up to leave, then paused and looked back at me. For what it's worth, I always thought Jenna was a witch. You deserve better. Thanks. So do you. Step 3 would have to wait until Monday. I spent the weekend in my workshop rebuilding the engine on a 1967 Mustang that had been sitting in my garage for 3 years. It was mindless mechanical work that helped me think through the final phase of my plan. By Sunday night, I had it figured out. Monday morning, I called in a favor from an old friend. Danny Reeves had been my sergeant when I'd done a stint in the Army National Guard 10 years ago. Now he worked as a private investigator in Boston, specializing in insurance fraud and cheating spouses. I need surveillance photos, I told him. Professional quality, admissible in court, of your wife, ex-wife, and her boyfriend. I need proof of adultery that will hold up in divorce proceedings. Danny was quiet for a moment. This is personal, isn't it? Very. My rate is $500 a day plus expenses. Done. And Evan, be careful. This kind of thing can get ugly fast. It's already ugly. I'm just making sure it gets ugly for the right people. Danny arrived in Millbrook Falls that evening, driving an unmarked van equipped with telephoto lenses and digital recording equipment. By Wednesday, he had enough evidence to bury Jenna and Logan in any courtroom in the state. Photos of them together at the gym, at restaurants, at Logan's apartment, audio recordings of conversations where they discussed their plans for the future and their contempt for me. Most importantly, he had video of Jenna meeting with Derek, her Boston lawyer, at a hotel restaurant in Springfield. The conversation, recorded through a directional microphone, included detailed discussions of how to hide assets, manufacture evidence of abuse, and maximize her divorce settlement. It was enough to destroy her credibility and probably get her charged with fraud. But I wasn't done yet. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place on Thursday, when Sasha finally worked up the courage to show Logan the photos I'd given her. I wasn't there to see it, but Mrs. Kowalski was. According to her eyewitness account, Logan had stormed into Steph's house around 8 p.m., shouting loud enough to wake the dead. The fight that followed could be heard 3 blocks away. That boy has a temper, Mrs. K reported over coffee. The next morning, threw Jenna's suitcase right out the front door. Clothes went everywhere. "What about Jenna?" Crying and carrying on like someone died. Steph had to call her brother to come pick her up. "Where is she now?" Mrs. K shrugged. "Motel 6 out by the highway last I heard. Logan won't take her calls and Steph's tired of the drama." "Perfect." I spent Friday morning at Tom Bradley's office going over the evidence Danny had collected and planning our strategy for the divorce proceedings. "This is enough to get the marriage annulled on grounds of fraud," Tom said, reviewing the surveillance photos. "She'll get nothing." "What about the baby?" "Not your problem. Logan's the father. Logan can support it." I should have felt satisfied, vindicated, ready to move on with my life. Instead, I felt empty. For 3 years, I'd loved Jenna with everything I had. I'd built my life around her, planned my future with her, trusted her with my heart and my bank account. She'd repaid that trust by turning me into a joke and trying to steal everything I'd worked for. The rational part of my mind knew I'd won. I had the evidence, the legal advantage, and the moral high ground. But winning didn't feel like I'd thought it would. That feeling lasted until Saturday morning, when I got a phone call that changed everything. "Evan." The voice was shaky, scared. "Oh, it's Jenna. I need to see you. Please, it's important. We can talk through our lawyers." "No, this is different. This is about what really happened. About Logan and the baby and everything. I need to tell you the truth." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. It was the biggest mistake I'd made since saying I do. I should have known it was a trap. Jenna wanted to meet at Riverside Park near the old bandstand where the town held its summer concerts. It was a public place, neutral ground, the kind of spot where reasonable people could have reasonable conversations. The problem was that nothing about the situation was reasonable, and Jenna had stopped being reasonable the moment she decided to make our marriage into a public joke. I arrived 10 minutes early and parked where I could see the entire area. The park was mostly empty, just a few joggers and an old man feeding ducks by the pond. The October air was crisp and the leaves were starting to turn. It would have been peaceful if I hadn't been expecting an ambush. Jenna arrived exactly on time, driving Logan's Camaro. She was alone, which surprised me. She looked tired, older somehow, like the stress of the past few weeks had aged her years. She was also showing now. The pregnancy that had been her secret weapon was becoming impossible to hide. "Thank you for coming," she said as she approached the bench where I was sitting. "You said it was important." She sat down next to me, close enough that I could smell her perfume. It was the same scent she'd worn on our wedding day, and for a moment I felt a stab of something that might have been nostalgia. "I've been thinking about what happened," she began. "About us. About how everything went wrong." "Nothing went wrong, Jenna. You planned this from the beginning." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "That's not true. I've seen your phone, the real one, not the decoy you carry around in public. I know about Derek, about your plan to take me for everything I'm worth. I know about Marcus and the other guys you've been screwing behind Logan's back." Her face went white. "You broke into Steph's house." "I borrowed something that belonged to my wife. Technically, we're still married." "You had no right." "I had every right. You want to talk about what really happened? Let's talk about it. You got pregnant with Logan's baby, married me to provide cover, and planned to divorce me and claim the kid was mine so you could collect child support for 18 years. Jenna's composure cracked. Tears started streaming down her face, but I wasn't buying the performance. I'd seen her cry before, and this wasn't genuine emotion. This was manipulation. "It wasn't like that," she whispered. "Then tell me what it was like." She took a shaky breath. "I loved you. I really did. But Logan made me feel alive in a way you never could. He was exciting, dangerous. You were safe. Safe, predictable, boring. You came home every night at the same time, ate the same dinner, watched the same TV shows. I felt like I was suffocating." I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "So, you decided to have an affair?" "I decided to live a little, to feel something other than routine." "And the pregnancy?" She looked away. "That was an accident, but when it happened, I realized it was a sign. A chance to start over with someone who made me feel alive." "So, you married me to cover your tracks." "I married you because I thought I could make it work. I thought I could be happy with safe and predictable." "But you couldn't?" "No, I couldn't." We sat in silence for a moment, watching the old man throw breadcrumbs to the ducks. In the distance, I could hear the sound of traffic on Route 9 and the laughter of children playing on the playground. "What do you want from me, Jenna?" She turned to face me, and for the first time since Murphy's Diner, she looked genuinely vulnerable. "I want you to let me go. No lawyers, no court battles, no public humiliation. Just let me disappear. I'll sign whatever papers you want. I won't ask for anything." "What about Logan?" "Logan's done with me. He found out about the other guys and threw me out. I'm on my own now." "Good." She flinched again. "You really hate me, don't you?" I thought about the question. Did I hate her? Or was I just disappointed that the woman I'd loved had turned out to be someone I didn't recognize? "I hate what you did," I said finally. "I hate that you made me into a fool. I hate that you turned our marriage into a joke and our divorce into entertainment for the whole town. I never meant for it to go this far. Yes, you did. You planned every bit of it. The only thing you didn't plan on was getting caught. She started crying again, and this time it looked real. I'm sorry, Ev. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything. I know, but maybe we could start over as friends? I mean, for the sake of the good times we had. I looked at her, sitting there, pregnant with another man's baby, asking me to forgive her for 3 years of lies and betrayal. No, I said, we can't. That's when I heard the footsteps behind us. Logan Peretti emerged from the trees near the pond, flanked by his cousins Tony and S. They'd been hiding, waiting for Jenna's signal. You bastard, Logan snarled, his face still showing the bruises from our fight at Allie's. You ruined everything. I stood up slowly, keeping my hands visible. I didn't ruin anything. You did that all by yourself. She was going to leave you for me. We were going to be happy. She was never going to leave me, Logan. She was going to stay married to me and keep screwing you on the side along with half the guys in town. Logan's face darkened. You're lying. Ask her. He turned to Jenna, who was still sitting on the bench, tears streaming down her face. Tell him, Jenna. Tell him about Marcus. Tell him about the plan to claim the baby was mine so you could collect child support from both of us. Jenna looked up at Logan with an expression of pure desperation. Logan, please let me explain. Explain what? His voice was getting louder, more agitated. Explain how you've been playing me for a fool. Explain how you were never going to leave him. I was going to leave him for you. When after you bled him dry in the divorce, after you convinced him the baby was his, the pieces were finally falling into place for Logan. He was realizing that he'd been as much a victim of Jenna's manipulation as I had been. You used me, he said, his voice hollow with realization. No, Logan. I love you. I've always loved you. You love yourself. That's all you've ever loved. Tony and S were looking uncomfortable, like they'd signed up for a simple beating and found themselves in the middle of a soap opera. Logan, Tony said quietly, maybe we should just go. But Logan wasn't listening. He was staring at Jenna with the kind of rage that comes from realizing you've been played for a fool. 3 months, he said. 3 months I've been planning a future with you. I was going to leave Sasha. I was going to marry you. I was going to raise that baby like it was my own. It is yours, Jenna whispered. Is it? How can I be sure? How can I be sure of anything you've told me? That's when Jenna made her final mistake. Because I love you more than I ever loved him, she said, pointing at me. He's nothing. He's boring and predictable and safe. You're everything I want in a man. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Logan looked at me, then at Jenna, then back at me. You know what? He said. You deserve each other. He turned to walk away, but Jenna grabbed his arm. Don't leave me, Logan, please. I have nowhere else to go. He shook her off. You should have thought of that before you decided to screw half the town. I never shut up. The words came out like a slap. Just shut up. I'm done with your lies. That's when Jenna snapped. Fine. She screamed loud enough to echo across the park. Fine. You want the truth? Here's the truth. You're all pathetic. Every single one of you. She stood up, her face red with rage and humiliation. You, she said, pointing at Logan, are a small-town loser who thinks working on cars makes you a man. You live in a crappy apartment above a garage, and your idea of a good time is getting drunk at Allie's. Logan's face went white. And you, she continued, turning to me, are the most boring man who ever lived. 3 years I wasted on you. 3 years of pretending to be happy with someone who has no ambition, no dreams, no life outside of this pathetic little town. The old man feeding ducks had stopped to stare. A couple of joggers had slowed to watch the show. In the distance, I could see cars pulling over on Route 9 as word of the confrontation spread. "I deserve better than both of you," Jenna continued. "I deserve better than this whole damn town. I'm beautiful. I'm smart. I'm going places you can't even imagine." "Like the Motel 6?" I asked quietly. The question hit her like a physical blow. For a moment, she looked like she might collapse. Then she reached into her purse. "You think this is funny?" she said, pulling out her phone. "You think you've won?" She started dialing, her fingers shaking with rage. 911, I need to report a domestic violence incident at Riverside Park. My ex-husband is threatening me, and I'm pregnant. I felt the blood drain from my face. This was her endgame. If she couldn't have Logan, if she couldn't take my money, she'd destroy my life by having me arrested for assault. "Jenna," I said carefully, put the phone down. "He's here with 2 other men," she continued, speaking into the phone like I'm scared for my safety and the safety of my unborn child. Logan and his cousins were backing away, realizing they were about to become accessories to filing a false police report. "This is crazy, Jenna," Logan said. "He hasn't touched you." "Shut up!" she screamed at him. "You're all against me. You're all trying to destroy me." That's when I heard the sirens in the distance. Chief Murphy's cruiser came screaming into the park, followed by a second patrol car. They parked near the bandstand and approached with their hands on their weapons. "What's the situation here?" Chief Murphy called out. Jenna immediately shifted into victim mode, her voice becoming small and frightened. "Chief Murphy, thank God you're here. My ex-husband lured me here and threatened me. I'm pregnant, and I was afraid he was going to hurt me." Chief Murphy looked at me, then at Logan and his cousins, then at the small crowd that had gathered to watch the show. "Evan, is that true?" "No, sir." She called me and asked to meet. "We had a conversation. No one threatened anyone." "He's lying," Jenna said, tears streaming down her face. "He's been stalking me, harassing me. He broke into my friend's house and stole my phone." Chief Murphy's hand moved closer to his handcuffs. "Evan, I'm going to need you to come with me." That's when Mrs. Kowalski's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "That girl is lying through her teeth." Everyone turned to see my elderly neighbor approaching from the direction of the pond, carrying a bag of breadcrumbs and wearing an expression of righteous indignation. "Mrs. Kowalski," Chief Murphy said wearily, "this doesn't concern you." "The hell it doesn't. I've been sitting on that bench for an hour feeding the ducks and watching this whole thing. That girl asked Evan to meet her here. She brought those boys with her to ambush him, and she's been lying since the moment you arrived." "Ma'am, I need you to step back. I need you to listen, Ray Murphy. I've known you since you were in diapers, and I'm telling you, that boy," she pointed at me, "never laid a hand on that girl. But she's been planning this whole thing like some kind of soap opera." Chief Murphy looked around at the crowd, which was nodding in agreement with Mrs. Kowalski's assessment. Is there anyone else who saw what happened here?" Half a dozen hands went up. For the next 20 minutes, Chief Murphy took statements from witnesses. The story that emerged was consistent. Jenna had asked me to meet her. Logan and his cousins had been hiding in the trees, and no one had threatened or touched anyone. By the time he was finished, Jenna's story had fallen apart completely. "Okay, ma'am," Chief Murphy said to Jenna. "Filing a false police report is a crime." "I wasn't lying," she protested, but the fight had gone out of her voice. "Multiple witnesses say otherwise. I could arrest you right now." Jenna looked around desperately, realizing that her final gambit had failed. The crowd was staring at her with a mixture of disgust and pity. Logan and his cousins had already left. Even the old man feeding ducks was shaking his head in disapproval. "I want to go home," she whispered. "Where's home?" Chief Murphy asked. She didn't have an answer. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt sorry for her. "Chief," I said, "I don't want to press charges. I just want this to be over." He looked at me like I was crazy. "Evan, she tried to have you arrested for something you didn't do." "I know, but she's pregnant and alone and probably scared out of her mind. Putting her in jail won't solve anything." Jenna looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Surprise, maybe? Or gratitude? "You sure about this?" Chief Murphy asked. "I'm sure." He sighed and put away his handcuffs. "All right, but ma'am, I don't want to see you in my town again. You've caused enough trouble." Jenna nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The crowd began to disperse, their appetite for drama satisfied. Mrs. Kowalski patted my arm approvingly before heading home with her empty bread bag. Soon it was just me and Jenna, standing alone by the band where this whole mess had started. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why? What?" "Why didn't you let him arrest me? After everything I did to you?" I thought about the question. Why hadn't I let her face the consequences of her actions? Why had I shown mercy to someone who'd shown me none? "Because someone has to be the adult here," I said finally. "Someone has to stop the cycle." She nodded, tears streaming down her face again, but this time they looked real. "I really am sorry, E, for all of it. I know what happens now. Now you figure out your life without me, without Logan, without anyone else to blame or manipulate or use. Just you." She looked terrified at the prospect. "I don't know how to do that." "Then you'd better learn, because that baby you're carrying is going to need a mother who has her together." I turned to walk away, then stopped and looked back at her. "For what it's worth, Jenna, I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do." I left her standing there in the park, alone with her choices and their consequences. 3 days later, she was gone, packed up her stuff from the motel, and disappeared without telling anyone where she was going. Logan closed his shop and moved to Boston, looking for a fresh start. Steph Morrison lost her real estate license after an investigation into her business practices. And me? I went back to work, fixed broken pipes and squeaky doors and all the other problems that people pay me to solve. Ms. Kowalski brought me cookies every Tuesday. Big Mike and I had beers at O'Malley's every Friday. The town gossips found new scandals to whisper about. Life went on. 6 months later, I got the final divorce papers in the mail. Jenna had signed them without asking for anything. No money, no property, no alimony. Just her freedom. I never heard from her again. Sometimes I wonder what happened to her and the baby, whether she found whatever it was she was looking for, whether she learned to be happy with herself instead of looking for someone else to complete her. But mostly, I don't think about her at all. I learned something important from the whole mess. You can't fix people the way you fix broken toilets. Some things are just too damaged to repair. And the best thing you can do is walk away and let them figure it out for themselves. Or not. Either way, it's not your problem anymore. I kept the house, kept my business, kept my friends. I lost a wife, but I gained something more valuable. The knowledge that I could survive anything life threw at me. And in a small town like Millbrook Falls, where everyone knows your business and nothing stays secret for long, that's worth more than gold. The honeymoon was definitely over, but for the first time in years, I was okay with that.